Sorry to subject you all to another round of funny accents today. As was already said, I'm from Vienna, Austria, so not too far from Prague. I think what Helena said about superego should really make us think. Yeah, I mean, as you know, Sigmund Freud, who invented this concept of id, ego, superego, is from Vienna also. And the problem is, as I start my talk now, is, let's see if this works. No. Oh, something's wrong here in the sequence, let's put it like that. That most likely you now think I'm the villain. Yeah? I have to give a serious trigger warning. This is today about banks. This is about IOUs. So normally these are topics which are absolutely hated in Bitcoin. There's a lot of resentment, justified resentment against it. So I just ask, if you want to throw foul eggs, please do now while I can dodge them. But bear me out. Yeah? So there's a good reason why we are very suspicious of banks and IOUs, and we don't trust them. Yeah? It's from their construct, they are possible to betray our trust. They have a tendency to centralization. They're highly fragile. We all, probably many of us here in the room, suffer from the fragility living in the fiat world. We don't know what's going to happen. The other day, the Europeans decided to print 1 trillion new euros, essentially, to fund further war in Ukraine. So the politicians come up with a new crisis every day in order to print some more money. And IOUs, yeah, I mean, it's a bad word, but what I'm hoping to, let's say, transmit today is that banks are not banks and IOUs are not IOUs. And this is meant to confuse you, like our Austrian salons in Vienna, which run till midnight. So, but let's start first by taking a step back. Yeah? Each of us has their own reasons why we like Bitcoin, why we are in touch with it. My personal reason, so to say, having a background in banking and in economics, was that at some stage I also realized all the problems which we get because of the fiat system. I guess there's probably nobody in the room who will throw eggs at me when I say that inflation is not such a great thing. I guess we all experienced a new bout of it recently. It takes our money. And even when there is no inflation which we realize, the government, our superego, inflates money by 2% each year. That's a policy. Yes, if you have a 50-year work life, you can do the mathematics, 2% per year, 50-year work life, you know what you're left with in the end of your life. The other problem is these boom-bust cycles. Well, the problem with these boom-bust cycles is that they have been around for centuries, and there's a lot of nuance needed to understand them. But effectively, the boom-bust cycles has something very evil in it. Yeah? First, it pretends that life is good and easy, but there's always the invoice for this short-term gain, and this is the sometimes not so long-term pain, which is the recession. Companies going broke, people losing their life's work, people losing just employment, yeah? Getting poor, can't meet the rent. So it's a very bad thing, these boom-bust cycles. We all know about the asset price inflations, yes, stock going up, house prices going up, the chasm between rich and poor increasing because of the fiat system. And last but not least, because the government has various means like called progression, taxing systems, they essentially sap our productivity gains, which the entrepreneurs amongst us create, sap it off for the government to spend. And as we all know, the government does not always spend productively and efficiently, to say the least. And the social cost for that is also enormous. Yeah? When I talk to my kids, for instance, my sons, I mean, we are kind of all right, yeah? But so to say, the feeling, the depression of the people is the young people have a sense they won't be able to afford a house. House ownership goes down, and you need a house if you want to found a family. Yeah? Work kind of, one has a sense that honest work doesn't get you anywhere. It kind of raises all kind of ideas of scams and how to get rich quick and this type of let's say, sickening thought. And people feel powerless. They have a feeling that there is no future for them. So that's, so to say, my personal motivation and my hope for Bitcoin. But you may have your own. But today I'm going to talk about how these problems can be solved possibly with the use of Bitcoin. So let's start. Why is a bank not a bank? We have to there's a serious amount of nuance needed about banks. The one model which we live on today are the central banks. Yeah, so we're talking about something which is government controlled. Yes, they write very loud, oh, it's independent. But in reality, the governors are put in place and fired by the politicians. Yeah, Christine Lagarde is an extreme fantastic example. Yeah, the one who said inflation came from nowhere after printing 4 trillion of euros. Anyway, they essentially run by the political class. There's nuance needed there, I'll come to that. It's a monopoly. Yeah, it has forced legal tender laws. And essentially, it is a little nucleus of central planners, communist socialists, embedded in the most critical resource in any free market economy, which is money. Yeah? So we have the communists, we already mentioned what they do to people, have them in the middle of us and controlling everything in reality with the central banks. Whereas before central banking gained what it was, there were free banks. Yeah? And they're an entirely different animal. They were privately owned, they were run by business people who, well, there's an honor code for business people if they want to be sustainably successful. They competed with each other, which made sure that nobody took too much advantage of other people. And last but not least, it was according to the free market principles. And as you all may know, Austrian economists kind of like free markets, especially the Austrian economists from Austria. So let's see. So a bank is not a bank. Have you got it? No. Let's see. Why it's not coming? Yeah. Now, the problem is that today almost all banks are politically captured. Pretty much all banks. So this is why they really deserve our regard in Bitcoin, that they are highly problematic animals. Essentially, they are a cash machine for the government to print money to squander on whatever their latest crisis is they can trump up. It's, as I said, it's mentioned, it's so to say controlled by the political class, and worse, there's also cronies who, so to say, in this triumvirate, who influence the politicians to do what some of them want. Typically, that's even the more powerful bankers today. So they work in close coordination with government. How did they do that? I mentioned already the legal tender laws. It's a monopoly law. Only they can issue base money. If you are a bank, you need a bank license. Yeah? And if you don't want to lose it, you better stick to their regulations, or they fine you a lot, or they withdraw your license. So essentially, you lose your livelihood, the bank you build, your whole business. So there's no chance out. The government can debank the banks anytime. But I still think we should not go towards now blaming the banks. Yeah, we don't blame the slaves for being enslaved. We don't kill the slaves. We want to free them. So think Spartacus. Yeah? Work against the slave masters. Didn't go out so well for Spartacus. I have better hopes for Bitcoin. But I personally, my argument is we need to rebuild what is free banking. So that's what I'm talking about. And the reason why is that, so the question for me always is, okay, how can Bitcoin fulfill on those dreams, on this ideal which is in my mind? And for that, it needs to increase its utility still. Yeah, we all use it today for store value, but utility must not be fickle. What's happening in the past, let's say since 2020, we had this big upswing after El Salvador declared it as a legal tender, which is already a little bit weird because, so to say, in a free market, you need free choice in currency. Yeah, but it gave a huge boost to Bitcoin, also because of the credibility effect, which James mentioned before below. So there was this talk about the Bitcoin strategic reserve, which we all know now how it came out. And there was this talk of creating crypto regulation to make us all feel secure, where in MiCA in Europe, it's already very clear that it only serves one purpose, to give them the power to kill us. So it's more important than ever that whatever we build on Bitcoin, it must be either self-custodial, ultimately, or non-custodial. Otherwise, we have a political attack vector, and they hate us. We have to accept it. They just hate us. They will fight us tooth and nail. So yeah, I didn't think much of the let's say the political strategic reserve thing and all of these things. So so to say, I'm kind of proven right with the fallback to the ETF level, say, of adoption. The thing is, it can get even worse. Yeah, if you've seen what communism did in Eastern Europe, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, Romania, as they all are, keeping the people in. With crypto, it's going to be worse. You had to go to the border to get shot in the old days. Once they launch their CBDCs, they can not only unbank you, they can even de-money you, because they can shut down CBDCs at any time. I guess you all know that. They all say they don't want that. And there are nice people working at the EZB, and I mean that. I'm honest, yeah? I met them, I talked to them. One of my companies has actually a contract from the Austrian National Bank. So they mean it, that they don't mean badly. But I mean, it's built in there that they can control it. They will be able to program the money to immediately de-money everybody who does something which they don't like, be it politically or because we engage with the currency or money which is in competition to the fiat money. So where does that bring us? I take the level of Bitcoin not so much as a, let's say, value of money. It's more for me a sign how much utility Bitcoin has at any one time. So when I argue for the next level of Bitcoin, I don't care so much about the price. But let's say if we thought the utility of Bitcoin has to double so that its value would double, let's say to 200K from today's level, I think the next frontier where we can get that, now what does that mean? Yeah, is international trade. Yeah? I mean, we currently are always getting accused that Bitcoin is only for criminals, you know, it's for this drug trade and whatever. But international trade has some unique properties, which I think is an ideal next frontier for Bitcoin after the ETFs. To put it on perspective, we have about 105, 110 trillion, depending on world GDP, and 33 trillion of that, a third, is roughly world trade. What you also need to know is that world trade, the supply chains, the production chains, the things which come from, I mean, Australia is a primary materials country, agriculture, mining, till it comes to finally being a consumer, it's roughly 3 to 4 months. So if we divide that sum by 3, 4, we come to a demand of roughly 8 to 11 trillion US dollars. That's a lot of money. We heard today already that the influx of ETFs was about 50 billion US dollars. So here's a new pie out there for 8 to 10 trillion dollars, which means that to match the ETF influx, you roughly need about 0.5% of that quantity. Let's switch it, yeah? If some of you may have read the new adoption of Bitcoin report by River Bitcoin the other day. Has anybody read it, the 2025 edition? Highly recommended paper, gives really, really good status of Bitcoin. Anyway, they mentioned 3 chances for Bitcoin to reach the next level. 2 of them were politically, like strategic Bitcoin shares, and 1 actually was real economy. They did explicitly say they also see Bitcoin coming up in international trade, and mostly because while the US dollar during US hegemony was the, so to say, prime international reserve currency, that's changing because geopolitical tensions are increasing, as we can see. And in reality, I don't think anybody expects those tensions to ease anytime soon. If we are unlucky, they could actually be much more severe. So you need something which is above the sovereignty of the countrywide superegos, to use Helena's words, something which is global. And Bitcoin, of course, is global. Nobody can stop it. Yeah, that's so to say the good thing about it. And let's see. Yeah. And there's one more thing. Yeah? One of the ills of fiat is also this tight regulatory framework it is. Fiat is such a fragile thing that it's constantly threatened by something. So every time a threat comes up, they do a new band-aid, some regulation which will avoid that problem and that financial crisis, and here the AAA-rated bonds which aren't in subprime. So it's a very extremely complex network of regulations which are very hard to live by. And in fact, those 10 trillion which I mentioned before of world trade, which are being financed by world trade today, exclude an estimated 2.5 trillion, so 20% of that, which cannot even be done by fiat. Because of, let's say, Basel III rules, where credit can only, or trade finance can only be done if the company meets certain formalistic bureaucratic criteria, because they need so and so much history, because they couldn't have had that and that percentage of working capital over. I mean, a whole host of criteria which are typically central planner, wrapped about the whole thing without regard of the individual situation of the company. So this is mostly concerning small and medium enterprises, because kind of big corporations, they can kind of fix it for themselves. They have huge regulatory departments. They can comply. But the young, the innovative ones, and that's really also hurting productivity, and it's hurting the poorest countries of all. Because the poorest countries of all are most hit by this fiat gap. Their companies don't fulfill those conditions, which means the companies there can't grow, sometimes even have to shut down. People don't find work, they can't grow, so it really hits the poorest of poor and holds them back. And that's 2.5 trillion, so, and let's say to match ETFs from those 2.5 trillion, it's easy calculation, you need 2%, so that's not much. Yeah? This is a wide open field where Bitcoin can only do good. Now. Yeah. Now, and the thing is, Austrian economics is a little bit still misunderstood because we all focus very much on commodity money. There's going to be a workshop this afternoon. I'm going to demonstrate a new software which produces Bitcoin-denominated credit money for international trade. Yeah? So I'll show you. But in principle, the way this works is the following. To have trade work, it actually doesn't actually need any Bitcoin to change hand in the beginning. Yeah? So we had this situation, for instance, in Greece in 2015, where the Greek government essentially went bankrupt, and the EU, Troika it was called, wanted to impose some very, very harsh austerity measures on the Greek population to save themselves. Yeah, because if Greece had gone bankrupt, the other Europeans would have suffered big time. But they essentially went to the Greek people and said, okay, you have to bear the pain all alone. There was a referendum. 62% of people voted no, that didn't want this thing to happen. And that's not little. I mean, you know how close elections are these days. So 62%. And still, the government caved in. Because why? Some of us may have seen these pictures on television, the round table of EZB governors sitting around smiling. We're going to shut off Greece from the fiat money supply. Yeah? Banks closed. People could retrieve only the smallest amount of money. Couldn't buy, food. Some couldn't even pay medical bills. 3 weeks it was. And as Bitcoiners in Vienna at the time thought, this is when Bitcoin starts, and didn't. And the reason is, when the bank is closed, you cannot buy Bitcoin to start a Bitcoin system. But that's not actually a new thing, because we had that situation in history multiple times, and I'll come to that in a moment. But to cut a long story short, commerce, trade must be able to create its own currency at the time when goods are ready, because goods spoil. Yeah? You don't sell your milk. After 10 days, you can throw it away. Even clothes, the moths, it gets out of fashion. Anyway, so commerce always creates its own money, which is credit money. But the important thing is the credit money must be denominated in something with a best fixed supply, like Bitcoin or gold in the old days. Not fiat money, because that doesn't have a fixed supply, it's unlimited supply. It's created when needed so that goods are never stuck in the channel, which would be very wasteful. And the good thing is, as companies create it and pay with it, it gives the workers the chance to earn Bitcoin, which is so important. Because what we're doing now is we're buying Bitcoin, okay? We hodl it, but we also need to spend it to make Bitcoin be in real life and to replace the fiat system. And when we spend it, what do the merchants do? They change it back in fiat, and there it goes back again. So in effect, today, without credit money, we're just a friction. We always need on-ramps and off-ramps. So the goal must be to get by completely independent from the state, completely without on-off ramps, just stay on. And if companies use credit money, if they sell their goods for credit money, they can pay their workers in Bitcoin. And the workers then in turn can pay the rent with it, go to the supermarket with it. It's actually quite nifty, and you never need to get out of this circularity. And the very important thing is, however, when credit money has done its function, when the business which bought something with credit money has done its job, sold it again, sold those goods out of the supply and production chains, it gets Bitcoin. So that Bitcoin must be used verifiably to pay the credit money back on main chain. And by the way, we're talking huge sums here. Like this system has already kind of existed on gold, and we're talking credit money portions on each issue of several $100,000 to million. So this can carry a lot of main chain fees, by the way. So there's going to be a big change on how we're going to use the Bitcoin main chain if that type of future comes around, because the sums settled in each block will be gigantic, and I expect the main chain fees to go back up to several hundred, if not thousand, sats per V-byte. And because it's redeemed, because it disappears again, it's non-inflationary. So ultimately, the sum of credit money out will always be replaced by our 21 million fixed supply Bitcoin. So let's see if I get this clicker to work. Maybe the battery. Oh, there we are. Now let's move on to IOUs. Yeah? The very important thing to realize is fiat money is not an IOU. You know that, right? It's not an IOU because IOU means I owe you something. But what happens if you have a $10 bill and you go to the central bank and say, now you owe me $10. What do they give you for those $10? $10. Yeah, so it's a joke. They can create it out of thin air. We all know that. Government prints bonds. Yes, they sell it first to the bank, and only then it goes to the central bank, but in reality, it's just wool over our ears. Yeah, so there's the villain pulling wool over our ears. It's irredeemable, I already mentioned that. It's unlimited issuance, and it's a centralized monopoly. We went through there. But credit money, the right kind of credit money, we need to watch out. Austrian economics so say, distinguishes, at least part of our school, to be honest, actually splits in the school. Some of us, Mises, Hayek, Rallo, distinguish between credit money, which is issued against goods which are being put in the production and supply chain, and between fiat money, which is put into circulation against nothing, against thin air. So we must avoid fiduciary media. It's a strange word, I know, but credit money is so to say a real thing. It must be redeemable in Bitcoin. It is always limited. Yeah, it's not unlimited because it's limited by the amount of goods which go into trade and supply channel. It's always a fixed amount, well, a given but limited amount of goods which is in the economy. And last but not least, it's completely decentralized. Any businesses which wishes can sell its good to another businesses which is willing enough to accept a bill of exchange, that's the tool we're using, going for 3 months or 4 months or however long they need to bring those goods to the market, to market them. Because goods are also marketable goods, obviously. Otherwise they wouldn't be goods. So how could this work on Bitcoin? Actually, how does it work? Because we finished the software for that about 4 weeks ago. Very early, but it's finished. So in principle, we start with one business selling goods to another business and not paying in cash, not in cash Bitcoin, but paying with this piece of paper, with this IOU, it's called bill of exchange, saying, I will pay you in 3 months. And this has been, by the way, developed over several hundred years, so about almost a millennium. 500, 600 years this has been in existence before fiat shut it all down. Within Bitcoin, what we can produce from these bills of exchange is we can, by software technology, essentially snipple this little bill of exchange in divisible parts. You can't do that with paper bill of exchange. But with code, it's perfectly possible to make a bill of exchange divisible, even if legally it stays one, let's say, virtual piece of paper. Now, as a business, getting those snippets, for which we use Xiaomi and eCash, some of you may have heard of Cashew or Fedimint. Who knows about Cashew and Fedimint here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, a third I would say. A third of you, good. So Xiaomi and eCash essentially can represent these snippets of bills of exchange, and the companies, as I already mentioned, can pay their workers with it. And the workers, in turn, can pay their rent with it, they can pay at the supermarket with it, they can pay the utilities. And when maturity comes, the buyer pays back the bill of exchange in actual Bitcoin on-chain, and the eCash gets burned, disappears again. I had a video here to demonstrate it, but I think I sent it in too late and it couldn't be made to work to show the... No video. But anyway, so let's just recap. The important thing here is, just like Bitcoin as commodity money, as base money, credit money also needs some hard rules, which need to be in our genetics in order to make it work. So Bitcoin, for instance, has the rule, of course, no more than 21 million. In Bitcoin, the rules are, first of all, you never accept it if somebody created it against thin air. It must be verifiable that it has created when paying for B2B goods, from which you know that the business which holds it in very short time, 3 to 4 months, will be able to make actually money by selling it to consumers. Yeah, the goods must be marketable within the next 3 to 4 months. And those goods are proof of work. The company worked to produce grain, to produce ore, to produce metal, whatever. So this is, again, the proof of work principle, which we as Bitcoiners always employ. The other important thing is those mints, which produce the mini e-bills, the eCash, they must guarantee the redemption. Yeah, there's some mechanism by which we will make this non-custodial in the end. In this first version, it's not yet non-custodial, so really use with care, just a couple of sats. They must guarantee it, and it must be redeemed verifiably after the company sold those goods which it bought on trade credit to consumers. You can check that with something which is called banking policy, but in the future it's going to be, of course, minting policy, simply normally by dividing the total revenue of a company by the working capital employed, and that gives you a number, as an average number, how fast this company should pay its bills of exchange. So that's very important, and that's one of the jobs of the mints, to make sure mathematically that this ratio is being kept. And last but not least, and this is the most important thing of all, e-bills, electronic bills of exchange, must be paid on main chain. Yeah, we do that. If somebody, most of you or some of you will know Taproot protocol. Taproot, anybody? Yeah. So key aggregation. So what's happening is that the current holder of the Bitcoin, which would be the mint, requires the Bitcoin amount sent to an address which is the aggregation of the public key of the mint and the public key which, so to say, encodes the bill of exchange. So the merger of those two gives you a Taproot address by which you know with absolute certainty that a Bitcoin bill of exchange has been paid on main chain. You can prove that for all eternity. So I'm almost finished here, so I think I'm still in time. So I want to just emphasize there's a lot of attention within the Bitcoin space about technical scaling. Yeah? And it's important. Yeah? I'm not saying technical scaling is unimportant, but there are lots of ways to do that. Yeah? And now there's ZK proofs and there's ARC and whatever. But that's only part of the story. If technical scaling was the only problem Bitcoin has, then the guys who came up with Bitcoin Cash or BSV, they would have won the race, but they didn't, obviously. So what was always missing is the economic scaling of Bitcoin. And this economic scaling is this mechanism which I just described. So it works with e-bills and with e-cash. E-bills we call in this new system wholesale money, whereas e-cash we call retail money. That's the stuff which all of us will be using in the future. The e-bills are just between businesses dealing with other businesses, and it's that's, so to say, also kind of KYC, because if I owe somebody money, I need to know what it is, but only I need to know. Yeah, it's a need-to-know basis. Whereas e-cash, as you all know, is completely anonymous, completely private, completely uncensorable. Yeah, and I've already mentioned main chain. The cool thing about eCash, it's kind of really fulfills the dream. So what Cashew have been done and Fedimint have been done is you have unlimited transaction capacity. You have absolutely zero fee. You don't have to. Cashew has a factor in it, but I don't think it will be activated. And it's all instant. Yeah, so that's really cool stuff. If you haven't used it yet, use the early forms, Cashew and Fedimint, or come to our workshop today at 2:30. Let me just see. Where do I point this? Yeah. Well, actually, there's some more. So I guess just not to forget that. So far, we've always been dealing with the self-sovereign individual. Yeah, to orange pill them, to try and explain what Bitcoin could do to the world. But now the job is bigger. Yeah? Now we need to talk to companies. It's a very hard job because there are a lot of hurdles for companies to come up. We're going to talk about some of those in the workshop today at 2:30. But as I said, once we have Bitcoin in the real economy, the enemies of Bitcoin cannot say any longer that it's just used for, Silk Road type of stuff or criminal stuff. It will immediately help the reputation of Bitcoin if we help some of the poorest countries in the world and the poorest people there to thrive. Broader adoption is always good, and we've already talked about Bitcoin demand. And the other important thing is, while we are only relying on the fickleness of investors or the fickleness, even worse, of politicians, Bitcoin price is always going to be volatile. We're also going to talk about that this afternoon. Once this powers international trade, there's a constant flow of goods because we all consume every day. We eat, we drink, we need to be clothed, we want to go out. So once the demand is sustainable, nobody will be left behind if at some stage there is a correction, or worse, if, for instance, CBDCs shut us out from the on-off ramps. Yeah, so if any, Gosh. Yeah, so if any of you want to see this first time live, this system, we launched it almost 4 weeks ago now as for alpha testing. I'll be presenting it today, including the whys and how it works, and we'll also show you first time how credit Satoshis work. We'll send some into the room, and you so that they can have some of the first credit Satoshis, run them out amongst you, and we've put the bill of exchange in such a way that they convert into real Bitcoin tomorrow, Sunday, 11 o'clock Australian time. Yeah, so join us at 2:30. And so to experience it live, because it's always important to actually feel it and use something to get to understand it. Thank you.